Here, this part that was began by the 60s, then Passion facade. See how helpful was really that Gaudi was finishing the other part, because when it came to make the towers, they only had to look at the other ones. There are slight differences, but really it's the same general shape. Here, where nowadays there is some offices of the Sagrada Familia, was the workshop of Gaudi. And it's very interesting to see all pictures. Sadly, it was destroyed because what happened with the Sagrada Familia? As many churches in Barcelona, it was an objective of some violent squads of a faction of the anarchists called FAI that they hate the church because it is true for decades or even for centuries they were a break to progress, and even in the fascist uprising of the General Franco, many priests they were backing this fascist general. Not all. It was the Archbishop of Tarragona who was against and had to go to exile, but many other bishops, like Bishop of Barcelona, was in favor of Franco. So, as a reprisal, then at the beginning of the Civil War, that could be stopped here, the fascist uprising, but finally, after 3 years of war, they were defeated, the workers, the Catalans, and the democratic people. So, as a reprisal at the beginning, they were burning many churches. And here, Sagrada Familia, also they tried to put it on fire, but some officials of the Catalan government went quickly there and said, look, don't burn it because these high towers, 100 meters, will be perfect to put an anti-aerial battery. And they were more or less convinced, but they desecrated the tomb of Gaudí that is buried in the crypt right underneath the altar. And now it's in a process of beatification. His case is being studied in the Vatican because some people really believe he was making a miracle healing a blind woman. But actually, that's not the most important of Gaudi, obviously. The most important is really he created a new type of church as a new type of garden, a new type of park, and so many things that you can see and admire in Barcelona. But well, despite they didn't put to fire the whole church, they desecrate the tomb of Gaudi. Then, thanks God, it was buried again in the same place. But they destroyed part of a workshop that it was there. And it was an ultra modern workshop, not with these funny curvy surfaces and stained glass, ceramic look of the buildings of Gaudi that we have this more idea. If they tell you that is the work of Le Corbusier or Gropius or some of these architects that they create the new architect, you would say, okay, yeah, of course, no, because it's like a screen of glass, just a simple but also very innovative proposal. But no, it was Gaudí. So that is the proof that Gaudí he was informed about all the trends of architecture, but probably he found it not fitting for a church or not fitting for a house, and probably even he found it so easy to build just with planes and a kind of cubic shape. He was facing architecture or urbanism even more like a challenge and as a way to honor God, imitating his creation. He said, look in nature, everywhere, our bones, our flesh, the skin, for example, in between the fingers, that is also this hyperbolic paraboloid shape that we were seeing on these domes. Look at the roots, look at the nails, everywhere in nature, the trunks of the trees, the branches, is not built by cylinders or 90-degree angles, everything goes twisting and warp. And that was his mission. Actually, that's what he said. That is what he said to some of his colleagues, that he wanted to create his creations or to make his creation similar to the creation of world that is full of these warped surfaces. And in the destruction of his workshop, many things they were lost forever. But thanks God, as together with some drawings, he also was making the things three-dimensional with plaster and with like these little models, 1 meter, 2 meters, and so on. The clay, the chalk, plaster is not that easy to destroy it, despite they were smashing some of these small projects. And that was the nightmare and a long job for years of the architects that they inherit the project. When Gaudi was gone and after this crisis of the Civil War, By 40s, when they had no money to build, they were studying and putting again all these tier pieces until slowly they were reconstructing the small models. But actually it was very helpful because even if they couldn't reconstruct the whole column or the whole lantern or the whole ceiling or sacristy, if they were able to reconstruct a third, then they could extrapolate, deduce what follows, no, what was the whole, and actually that can be seen in the museum here underneath, below the church. The whole church is like the basement, very mighty columns, and there can be seen many pictures and many of these pieces done by Gaudí and then reconstructed or rebuilt. And that is the proof that really all that they have built after Gaudí is not invented by a modern architect, is really what Gaudí designed. Many people, even architects, they say, well, that's modern, that's not Gaudí. Gaudí would be ashamed. They never should have continued the work. But there in the museum, you have the proof that not 100%, but 90% of what they have done afterwards is really what Gaudí made. The only thing is that Gaudí didn't make it, but he designed it in small. That is the story of the Sagrada Familia. And also in the museum you can see a so-called stereofunicular machine, like many chords machine. That is this experimental way that Gaudí was designing. He didn't invent it since the Renaissance or even before the Gothic. Many architects were using chords to design not only on the flat but hanging chords. So if you have a chain, for example, and you let it down from the two ends, you hold it with two fingers, you have an arch. And if you bring it up, even just for a microsecond, then you get this parabolic arch. Or if you take two chords that they are hanging down and you join them, and then you put more chords and you start joining them with a mirror, then you get the inverts. So that was an experimental way that Gaudí was designing. Obviously, then he was making some calculations to make sure that the building won't collapse, or he made some of his colleagues make these calculations. And actually, one of the things Gaudí was doubting about the efficiency of this new architecture, he was puzzled that nobody before had been practiced these leaning columns, parabolic towers, warped surfaces, this kind of domes, or ceilings, paraboloid. That was, after he said, the only thing that made him doubt that nobody before had essayed. But obviously, if you try something in small and works, then you are more sure that could work in much more large dimension. Well, here we are approaching the Passion facade. Gaudí made a sketch of the portico, these leaning columns that they look like roots, and they get wider at the top and on the bottom to better catch the weight from above. Then they get like more tension and thinner in the middle, and to better lie on the ground, they also extend as it would be a kind of cock foot or an elephant foot. And always this principle of finding the right angle, a 10-degree angle, to better underpin the over structure. That is another of the revolutions of Gaudí. Gaudí, as other engineers and architects, they knew that to support something, normally from above you have side thrust. So the best way is to underpin it with a certain angle, no? As if you are lying to rest on a tree, so you don't put the arm 90 degree, but you put it a bit up, no? So that is the concept, but it was kind of forbidden since the Greeks, the architects were told that the columns to look nice, to look beautiful, they should to look sober and solemn, they should be perfectly vertical. Macaulay said, well, I don't mind about tradition, so he was bringing it in the right angle to better support the upper structure. So all this area that we are facing now, Gaudí made a sketch even of the figures, Jesus Christ being crucified, Longinus with a lance, the Three Marias crying, Veronica's veil, and so on. But it was just a sketch. That was really the work of a sculpture of the 80s that he was suffering so much criticized because here a lot of people that they were not Catholics or they were not churchgoers, they said, well, why we are building still a church in late 20th century? We are a secular society, that makes no sense, that's That's very expensive. We are making a disgrace because Gaudí was a genius, but he's not here anymore. And when Subirats, that was the name, Josep Maria Subirats, start to make this sculpture much more aggressive, like a bit of cubist even, or even some faces Dali style, faces without eyes, void, very sharp combinations of chiaro oscuro. They say, well, that's very different from Gaudí's. The other figures we have seen at the beginning of the video. But the sculptor said, look, I cannot make curvy, nice, smooth bodies and surfaces because that's death, that's the passion. When they were torturing him, lashing him, putting the crown of thorns, then being crucified. So fits more a more aggressive cut of the stone. That was his explanation. And anyway, he said, look, we are not in the time of Gaudí. Gaudí wanted to make sure that the whole project, the architecture, the frame, it's one, it's coherent, that not every facade is very different, but as happened for centuries with many churches, the architecture is one, but then the chapels, you have many different chapels from different epochs, from different sculptures, from different styles. So despite the Sagrada Familia is not a cathedral, it's very similar to the cathedrals because they have a single coherent style, but then as it was taking many centuries or decades, centuries to finish, you have a great combination of styles. So Gaudí knew that his work will evolve. He was foreseeing that probably they will use concrete. Lately, they are using like a third type of construction after Gaudí's traditional construction method, ashlar, mortar, ashlar. Then around the 40s until 2000, reinforced concrete. And lately, they are working with a post-tensate stone, back to the stone with no concrete. So the stones in the quarry they are perfectly cut, but then inside they are perforated. And they put a kind of steel cable and they span it, and then they put concrete, and then they put some kind of lockers at the ends, and the stone is even harder and more strengthful as the natural stone. And then comes the lorry, the crane picks up the stone, and with some kind of vertical guides and some nails, then it's placed in the right position. So it's like a giant stone Lego work nowadays, the Sagrada Familia. Well, Gaudi wanted here the shock to say the beginning was very nice when he was born, but then he ended in a very bad way. But there is the resurrection. So in the center of this cat column, like the end of something, the end of a life, but then the beginning of another life. When he was in the palace of Pontius Pilatus, front left, the kiss of Judas, the left hand side, the Last Supper. We are commenting Longinus, left halfway, the top left, the soldiers playing dice to see who would get this kind of blanket that Jesus had, and some other moments, no, like when Peter is ashamed because he denied his master 3 times before the cock sang, or right when Pontius Pilatus, the governor of Judea, washes his hands, top right when he is being buried, and in the middle, Veronica showing the face of Jesus, and on the top, the crucifixion. So this architecture, the leaning columns, very shocking, very effectful, okay, leaning. Always look again from right, from the sides to the center up, this triangle raising up. The upper structure is the work after this sketch of a New Zealander architect that has been one of the greatest architects in the last years. Many sculptures also. On the other side, Tetsuro Soto, a Japanese architect. Nowadays, there are a lot of people working here, like 300 Catalans, foreigners that they become Catalan, and people working in network in other universities, network universities, Dusseldorf, to make some mathematical calculations at certain times that have been helping contributing stone nowadays coming from Scotland, Galicia, Iran, Porphyr. Here, left, right, Jesus Nazarene, King of the Jews, Inri, and behind names of prophets. Well, in the last years, they are decorating the church. So after finishing with the main architectonic work, kind of forest of stone trees holding the whole ceiling, So bringing all the weight inwards and letting the facade just like a screen wall. Gaudi invented this new supportive way, a kind of hybrid in between the flat ceiling type and the bolting. It's kind of an hybrid for a better supporting and that there is an uninterrupted area and space inside. So inside is absolutely very eye-catching, no, and emotional. It feels like there is no barriers in between, like a bird could fly so freely and so happily between the columns, the ceiling. He multiplied the points of subjection or taking the weight instead of a keystone and certain columns can multiply the number of fingers holding the ceiling, and so with these hyperbolic shape empty keystones, hyperboloid, they are hyperboloid, so on the upper part where there is going to be a kind of tribune where you could walk. It's also like a ring, no, holding by itself, compressing all the weight, and then the distribution of weight as it would be an avenue of trees that progressively and always with the trunk leaning and then the upper branches even more leaning until they turn trunk branches into leaves. Certain point, the thrust is concentrated in a new capital that Gaudi invented, an ellipsoid, like a kind of melon, rugby ball, an ellipsoid. And as we were saying, both inside and outside, once finished the main architectural structure or skeleton, then they are decorating it with many saints, letter, alpha, omega, the presence that the three-wise men of Orient brought over there. Both you can see the chalice and the hostie with grapes and wheat below. So always there is this great symbolism. There is baskets of fruits after Ezekiel saying that out of a well will come some water and will make grow trees of all kinds that will be medicine and will be nourishing for us. So that would be the reading of the Sagrada Familia like a giant well that gives us spiritual nourishing. And from here, the southern part, see how he's raising the central body of the evangelist and the biggest diameter tower, that is the one of Jesus Christ, that will raise the highest. From here also you can see how it has been locked close, the main facade, and these two heights inside. It's quite ample, 45 meters, so wide as the central nave, 45, matching one of the greatest churches of all times, like Köln. And so five aisles like Sevilla, Toledo, Cologne, but still is to come. They have to attach there a fantastic facade that was very precisely drawn and even made with these plaster models of the glory, la Gloria, la Fasana de la Gloria. So Nativity, Passion here, and Gloria. That Gaudi made it in a very even more radical than the other because there is some kind of projecting cone as it would be towers from a fantastic medieval castle, but at the same time they match the forms of the erosion of the hill slopes. Many times in the hill slopes, when there is of soft stone, they make this kind of conic shape. And at certain times, so the earth remains, but below gets more erosionate. So he was a great observer of nature, and maybe, who knows, he was being inspired in the very same geology, and above he plays his little design, many clouds, and a whole credo with wire of the credo. No? I believe in God that is one, the Son, the Father, the Holy Ghost, and I said, central nave higher and the side aisles like a third lower, 30 meters high. And actually all the proportions inside they play with these stairs. 90 meters long central nave and 60 the crossing nave. The columns also they have like at certain point they raise to 30 and then the branching starts at 30 to reach 45. So always this proportion that makes it all together as built. They have all the proportions. Probably the one of the towers, the pinnacle, is the golden snit, the golden proportion. Ah, well, for the opening of the consecration as Basilica Minor, like monumental church, waiting to be declared Basilica Major. They finished this provisional facade, but as we said, they have to add all this set of clouds and the credo. And then to make a proper monumental entrance with a nice staircase, all this building right, they must go something that already when they built it, they knew by some bribery, some constructor was able to build here, but already they knew that in the initial plans that they were accepted by the council, nothing should be built in front of the facade of the Sagrada Familia. Then maybe for another chapter, we'll dedicate a single examination of this little church here that they have this waving roof. Another great example of the geniality of Gaudí with such cheap means, just flat brick. He was able to build something so shocking and always out of straight lines. So well, here we finish the Sagrada Familia. Hopefully, in a matter of less than 8 years, we'll see finish. But then for sure, we'll begin the cleaning of the older facade, and it will be for sure a never-ending story. And Gaudí was able to give to Barcelona something that very few cities they have. This type of buildings that straight the people identify with a place, like the pyramids of Egypt or the Statue of Liberty or the Eiffel Tower.